So I see a question about prerequisites needing to be taken before any anthropology classes, and the answer is no. There aren't any, with the exception of the senior seminar. One of the things that you'll find at Dartmouth is that we really want our students to become well-rounded and to take as many classes as possible in the different institutions. We believe in the liberal arts education, and so we don't want to burden our students with having to take too many prerequisites in order to be a major, at least in some of the disciplines. Of course, that's going to make sense in some other disciplines to have had some foundational courses before you move on. But in anthropology, that is not the case. We have opened up our classes, and what we find is that students catch up real fast, and then because they've taken classes in other disciplines, they come to the table with such a wonderful wealth of information, and we end up having some really beautiful discussions from students that are quite well-rounded. Reagan asks, what is my favorite anthropological mystery? Sure, okay. So we, a couple of years ago, were working in South Africa, and we work in caves in South Africa. And we had discovered a number of caves using Google Earth. Google Earth actually can see the caves really well. And we were exploring those caves, and there were so many of them that we just could not keep up. We couldn't keep pace with how many caves there actually were. So we contacted spelunking groups throughout South Africa, and we said, hey, look, there are all these caves, and if you find any bones, let us know. And in 2013, there was a spelunking team of Rick Hunter and Steve Tucker, and they went into a cave known as Rising Star, and they squeezed down this tiny little gap that was only 7 inches wide into a chamber, and there were bones everywhere. We then, I didn't go into the chamber, I can't fit in the chamber, but we put out a call for skinny scientists who had excavation experience and who could cave and who had degrees in anthropology, anatomy, archaeology, something like that. So they knew what they were doing. And there was a team of, an all-women team of, we call them underground astronauts, that went down into the chamber, and they excavated now close to 2,000 fossils of what turned out to be a new species of early human called Homo naledi. Now, I worked on the legs and the feet of Homo naledi. It was very similar to us in many respects, but the brain was much smaller. The teeth were like ours, but the hands had curved fingers. Even the toes were curved. It was a fascinating combination of anatomies. And I would have guessed, I would have bet my house that this was a 2 million year old hominin. It was right around it looked like it was a good ancestor to Homo erectus. And we dated the fossil using the geology of the cave around the fossil. And I was off by a power of 10. It was only 200,000, 250,000 years old. And we know that Homo sapiens, our own species, existed at that time in that place as well. And then just this week, there was a new fossil date for a fossil in the same area that was around the same age, that was also not Homo sapiens. So on the same landscape, we have Homo sapiens, what we would call Homo heidelbergensis, and Homo naledi. And the big mystery to me, and what we're all trying to figure out, is how in the world did they interact with each other? Was there any gene flow? Was there, as we know, happened with the humans and Neanderthals? And so what was the relationship between these populations or even species of early humans? And then why is it just us now? Why do we now live in a world where we are the only upright walking hominin, when all throughout our evolutionary history, all the way back to the split with our ancestors with chimpanzees, there were multiple forms of hominins coexisting? So that's a wonderful mystery that we have right now in our field.
Guys, these questions are awesome, and I just want to respect Jerry's time. It's 7:32 right now. Wow, there are a ton of great ones in here. So Jerry, you okay answering a few more?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we do as college professors at Dartmouth is we stay after class and answer questions. So I'm happy, you kidding me? I love fossils. So I am happy to keep answering questions. So I see someone has their hand up. I don't know if we want to try one of those, Topher.
Sure. Well, now more people have their hands up. I see Justin Fajar. Um, Justin, I'm going to turn on your mic. We'll see if this works. Go for it, Justin.
Hi, Professor. I just wanted to ask if there was a year requirement for research, like if freshmen would be able to join you on anthropology research, like as we were talking about in Africa.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So I like to get students started early. Angeli Prabitz, who I mentioned, who is now a senior, she started doing research with me her freshman year. And so she took one of my classes. She's pre-med. She took one of my classes. She got hooked, got really interested. I didn't take her to Tanzania right away. Instead, she did some lab work with me. And then that turned into a research study that she did, and she's been doing for the last couple of years, looking at body proportions, looking at the size of upper limbs compared to lower limbs throughout human evolution. And she's made some fascinating discoveries. She presented that work last year at the American Association for the American Association of Physical Anthropologists, which is our annual conference. She presented that last year, and then she came to Tanzania. So again, I like to have students start early. It's not a requirement, of course. If someone's interested, their sophomore or junior year, that's fine too. But if students can get in the lab early, it works out really well for both of us, both the research I do and also for the student. So I would recommend everyone who's listening that, of course, you know, not everyone here is going to be interested in anthropology. Whatever it is you are interested in, whatever it is that really you're passionate about, and you may not know yet, and that's fine. As a student, I never took an anthropology course. I discovered this later. I was taking astronomy courses and in biology. I was into science, but I didn't discover this stuff until much later. So whatever it is that you love, talk to your professors. Go to office hours. Stay after class and talk to the professor. There's a reason we're here at Dartmouth. You know, one of the things we don't do here is leave the teaching to our grad students. We teach and we interact with our students. And we believe in that teacher-scholar model, and you know, it helps us do our research, and I think it benefits you as well. So I see another question about, can any student, even if they're not an anthropology major, go on trips to Africa? The answer is yes. When we took students to South Africa, we deliberately created a class that was not just anthropologists. We wanted students who had different backgrounds who are going to contribute to that kind of experience. So we had students who were cultural anthropology students, biological anthropology students. We had a psych major. We had a student who was an engineer. And we had a history major. We had students from all different disciplines because that's what it takes to really have a full experience in a place like that. You can't just be single-minded and focus only on the paleontology when the history of South Africa is so fascinating and the ecology of South Africa is so fascinating. All of those things were part of that experience, and that we benefited enormously from having students from different majors contribute to that. I learned as much as I'm sure the students did. And that's, you know, one of the great things about being a professor at Dartmouth is that, you know, the students are amazing, and you know, you're all super smart and motivated, and you know, so I, you know, can collectively learn from your brains, right? A lot more than whatever can fit in this thing. Let's see. A question about, can you conduct research that combines multiple disciplines? Not only that, but we have what's called a modified major, where I have students who get interested in anthropology, but they're also interested in psychology, and they want to do something related to the brain. And so they do a modified major where they take courses in anthropology, but also courses in psychology, and then that's their major. We don't assume to know what sort of categories are going to be the best for you as a student. You will know what it is that you love and what you're passionate about and what kind of classes you want to take. And so if you can make a really good case, you can build a modified major. I had a student last year who was examining, she was examining the shape of the pelvis So here's pelvis. And what you might notice is that the pelvis is not very linear. There are lots of curves. And in order to quantify this, you have to understand some pretty sophisticated math to fit curves to that surface. And she was a math whiz. And so she modified anthropology with math and ended up doing research with me, fitting spheres to fossils, reconstructing fossils that weren't complete, and then doing her work on the pelvis. She's now graduated and is also applying to med school this year. So Topher, should we take another question?
We have Alexandra Ma with her hand up. I'm going to turn her microphone on.
I was wondering how research and the whole anthropology experience differs between the different concentrations.
Oh, yeah, great question, Alexandra. So for those who aren't familiar with this, anthropology, which is just the study of humans, can be broken up into 4 subfields. There's what we call biological anthropology. That's what I do. There's another professor at Dartmouth, Professor Dominy, Nate Dominy. He studies monkeys, and he studies, he's very interested in diet and the evolution of diet and why we eat what we do and why different primates eat what they do. And there's another professor, Professor Thayer, who's interested in the effects of stress on human health. So she's a human biologist. So those are biological anthropologists. We also have linguistic anthropologists that studies language and really meanings of words. And then there are cultural anthropologists who study living cultures around the world, both similarities and differences. And then there are archaeologists who are the most like us. They study people's trash. They study, the stuff we've left behind as evidence we were here in the past. And that's an endearing thing to say, that they study people's trash. We all work together. We get along great. It's a really fun, functional department. We all recognize that you can't understand these ancient early humans unless you understand them as thinking cultural creatures, pre-linguistic in this case, but eventually learning language. And then by this age, they're already making artifacts. So there's the intersection of these different disciplines. A lot of the research that we see from our students is funded by what I mentioned earlier, this Goodman Fund. We usually have at least a dozen students get Goodman fellowships and then travel all over the world to collect their data. They go wherever they need to go to collect the data to answer the question that they're answering, regardless of what subfield they happen to be in. There are places where the different subfields don't agree with each other, and that can cause some real rifts. And Dartmouth is not one of those places. We respect each other's work and we get along really well. Now, we could probably do a better job of having students overlap with us and the interests that we have. But that's something we'll work on in the future. But yeah, it really doesn't matter the subfield that you're in. Those research opportunities are available to you. Let's see. So I see a question: how do students get involved with research usually? It comes from the classes you take, I would say. There are a couple of ways to do this, but what I see typically is that a student takes a class, and maybe it's a class that you're eager to take, or maybe it's a class that just fills some requirement, and you fall in love with the subject. It just gets you, right? And not only do you do the assignments that the professor asks you to do, but you ask for more, right? And if that happens, if you are in a class and you just can't get enough of it, and you're reading on your spare time about it, then you should absolutely go to the professor's office hours and ask them about research, and ask them, what does it take to get involved with research? Another avenue into research is what we call undergraduate research opportunities, UGAR. You can go on the website and you can see professors will post research projects to the website, And so if I have a research project I want done, I can try to find a student that way. So for instance, when we were doing our bear study, I needed somebody to look over about 500 hours of bear footage that had videotapes that had been taken by a researcher, Ben Killam in New Hampshire. And so what I did was I went on that website and I advertised a research opportunity. And then I immediately had a couple of students that thought, oh, bear research, that sounds fun. And they did that video analysis. And then one of those students, Camille Johnson, was the one that then came out to the field with us and collected a lot of that footprint data. And so that's another way that you can find research opportunities is to look on the undergraduate research website and search for what professors are looking for. But really what I see most of the time is that a student takes a class with me and then can't get enough of it and comes and sees me in office hours and just says, I want to be involved in research. And those students are really fun to work with. Yeah. There's a question about anthropology majors and what do you do as an anthropology major? And what I tell students is that as an anthropology major, you are equipped, you have learned how to be a human and what it means to be human. You've learned all about people, and there is no job in the world where you cannot, where you don't eventually have to deal with people. And so you could go into a marketing agency and sell yourself as somebody who understands people, you understand their tendencies, and you should give me this job in this marketing department. Or you could go to the State Department and say, I understand differences in culture around the world and what that means. And you could work for the State Department. You could, I've got students who have, a student did an internship for a shoe company because she had researched foot anatomy and variation in foot anatomy across different humans. And then she really understood how the foot worked, the anatomy and physiology of that, and then ended up working as an intern for a shoe company. So yes, we do get a lot of medical students, a lot of pre-meds, and a lot of our students go off to med school. But many of our students, the sky's the limit with the sorts of things that you can do, not only with a Dartmouth degree, but if you learn how to sell yourself right. I wouldn't walk into a job interview and say, I was an anthropology major, because most people would equate that with Indiana Jones, or that you know something about, archaeology. They wouldn't really get it, but you'd have to word it differently and frame it as, I got a degree from Dartmouth and I understand how people work because of the classes I took and because of the research that I did. But yeah, a lot of pre-meds and I think they benefit enormously from having an anthropological perspective and really thinking about not just the anatomy of people, but more about the whole body and mind and culture of the patients that they're going to be working with.
Jessica asked, what is your favorite place in the Upper Valley?
Oh, I love that question. The Upper Valley is the best. It's a magical place. So it depends on the season, to be honest with you. This place changes enormously from season to season. But my favorite place, so I'll do it by season if you don't mind. My favorite place in the winter is the Dartmouth Skiway. This is a place, if you know how to ski already, this is a great place to be. If you don't know how to ski, this is a great place to be. Because you go to the Dartmouth Skiway and you can really learn. I'm not a good skier. My kids blast down the hill. They're great skiers. They're only 9 years old and they put me to shame, but I love it in the winter. It's just a gorgeous place. And it's a real community up here. So I see my students there. I see neighbors. I see, fellow professors and other folks that work at Dartmouth. It's just, I love it there. In the fall, you want to go to a place where you can see the whole valley, and that's Mount Cardigan. Mount Cardigan is a mountain that's just about 20 minutes, maybe a half hour east of Dartmouth. And it's one of the best hikes around. Mount Moosilauke would also be up there as well. Go up high and you see the foliage. And if those of you from New England know this, but if you're not, the foliage here is just, it's magical. In the summertime, you want to get on the river. So the Connecticut River, there's the Ledyard Boating Club, and you can rent canoes and kayaks. I think as students you can probably, I don't know, Topher, you would know if you can get those for free, but certainly it's not expensive if it's not free to canoe the river. And it's so much fun to go out in the summertime and see all the students up and down the river, and I go out there with my kids. You know, it's a really family-friendly place for us. I've left the spring for last because the spring can be tough. It's mud season in the spring. The cold goes on for a while, but hiking in the spring, I love using some of the trails around campus and beginning to see the buds come out and hear the peepers and see the barred owls, and the bears are waking up as well. And so it's a great place for nature trails and all things outdoors.
Awesome.
Plenty to do if you're not interested in the outdoors either. There are museums around. There's a Montshire Museum, a Science Museum, the Hood Museum, which is an art museum. But it's a great place to spend 4 years.
Well, again, we've gone almost double our time, so maybe feels like a good time to wrap it up. I apologize to everyone who didn't have questions answered. We're going to be doing a faculty session almost every night or every Monday through Thursday for the remainder of April. And you know, whether or not you're interested in the subject matter, you can jump on any of them, all of them, and just learn about Dartmouth and about the people who animate this place. So with that, I want to thank Jerry. This is amazing. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you to all of you who joined us. And yeah, all the best. Take care.
Yeah, and I'll end as well, Topher, if you don't mind, that those of you who had questions that if they didn't get answered, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm on the website. You can shoot me an email if you have questions about the content, the fossils that we talked about, or anything like that. You know, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
You're the best, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.